This video will look at variable costing versus absorption costing. Remember, we have three product costs: direct materials, direct labor, and factory overhead. And remember, direct materials and direct labor are always variable, while factory overhead is a mixed cost. It has both fixed and variable costs included. Period costs, we have selling and administrative, and both period costs are mixed, meaning that they have both fixed costs and variable costs included within them. So absorption costing is what we've used so far. Everything we've done so far has been absorption costing, because what we've looked at so far has followed the rules of GAAP. And in order to follow the rules of GAAP, generally accepted accounting principles, you have to use absorption costing. So in absorption costing, all of your product cost, all of your direct materials, your direct labor, and your factory overhead stay with the product. In other words, whatever stage your inventory is in, that's where your product costs will be. If you recall, when we did our journal entries, we debited our work in process inventory for our direct materials, for our direct labor, and for our factory overhead. And then when the product was finished, it moved from our work in process inventory into our finished goods inventory. So it stayed within that inventory, the cost associated with manufacturing that product did, until we sold it. When we sold the product, then it moved out of the finished goods inventory into the cost of goods sold. So if the product's not sold, the costs associated with it would stay in the finished goods inventory. On the other hand, period costs come out of income in the month they're used. So variable costing differs from absorption costing in that it treats your fixed product cost or your fixed factory overhead as if it were a period cost. And the only costs included in the inventory are the variable costs, and the only costs included in the cost of goods sold are the variable cost. So using variable costing will make a difference on the bottom line. If we look at this fixed cost per unit graph, if you remember it decreases with increasing production. So in other words, if we have rent of $500 per month and we only produce one unit of product, then the cost per unit for rent is going to be $500. But if we produce 2 units of product, then that cost per unit is going to drop down to $250. And if we produce 500 units of product, then our rent per unit would drop down to $1 per unit. So the more you produce, the less fixed cost you're going to have per unit. Because of that, if you manufacture more than you sell, absorption costing will have a greater net income than variable, because in absorption, some of those fixed costs are going to stay in the inventory, while in the variable, you're going to take all the fixed costs out just like you do your period costs. We will look at an income statement in the next video. We'll look at a variable income statement and an absorption income statement and put some numbers to it so that you can see the difference. But if you sell more than you manufacture by dipping into your past inventory, in that case, then the variable would have a greater income than the absorption. So under absorption costing, increasing inventory levels will increase your net income. And again, that's because when you increase inventory levels, you decrease that fixed cost per unit. So while variable costs may be beneficial for management analysis, it's not allowed for external reporting. It's not allowed for external reporting because it is not according to GAAP. It does not follow the rules of generally accepted accounting principles, but it does give the manager the advantage of cost control and gives them another way to look at their costs. So that's the end of this video, but the next video will show specific numbers attached to a variable income statement and an absorption income statement.